My Family Thinks I'm Crazy, a podcast where I, your host, try to give you some tips on how you can explain all this weird, wild, crazy conspiracy stuff to the people you love most. Because that's what I've been trying to do for the past 10 years with no success.
I've been telling everybody that our government is shady, but every time I do, my family thinks I'm crazy. The hollow earth, UFOs, aliens invading, fluoride in the water, they spray our skies daily. When I talk about these things, they think I'm crazy. There's no escaping anymore the evil that we're facing. Illuminati mind control, they're sacrificing babies. The end of days, but anyways, my family thinks I'm crazy.
What, they don't want to listen to you?
No, they don't want to listen. They don't want to hear it. They're just like, oh, here we go, Mark. Off again with your...
Mark being Mark again.
Yeah. So, you know, that's the thing about podcasts is when you're on the air, and it's like therapy, you know? If I can't talk to my family about this stuff, I'll talk to you, Matt, and all our listeners.
You listen to your whole podcast.
Yeah. So who are we talking about today, Matt?
They think that I'm crazy. They really think that I'm crazy. They really think that I'm crazy. My family thinks that I'm crazy.
In 1680, Robert Hooke first witnessed cymatics in action when he drew a bow across a plate of glass dusted with flour, creating visible nodal points on the surface. Fast forward this concept to our modern subwoofers and amps, a matrix of manipulated music and weaponized frequency that's been unleashed on the ears of the masses, leaving them with nothing but a zombifying signal to tap into. Pushing back against this corrupted cacophony is rapper Cap Jones and Zack, the IPFS pirate behind Dead World Radio. All hip-hop, no whack shit. I'm Mystic Mark, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of the My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast with Cap Jones and Zack of Dead World Radio.
I know they say like cat purrs is a certain frequency that can actually like heal. So if they get hurt, sometimes like they'll just start purring, and it like helps. I don't know much about the biology of a cat, but like the molecules or whatever like start to repair themselves because of the frequency of a cat's purr. I thought that was kind of wild.
Depending on the tone and my ability to sort of completely dedicate myself to that given meditation, it would have different effects. Sometimes I would come out of the meditation with more energy, or I would come out of the meditation calm. I was fascinated by it because I'm naturally drawn to sound as an individual, tones and frequencies and things like that. And I did have the means to sort of look at what I was finding on the internet, be it, certain frequencies would cause this type of effect or can cause another type of effect, and sort of looking into that. I had what felt like dreams from certain meditations with certain frequencies. I was blown away by it.
I love the fact that you guys had a name that I recognize, and I was like, okay, cool. R.A. the Rugged Man's in there. I saw a bunch of names I didn't recognize, but as I'm listening, I'm like, holy shit, I fuck with this. I immediately enjoyed every single new artist that was in there. And that's what I love about internet radio is the sort of, curated style. You really resonate. If you resonate with whoever the creator is, obviously, you two gentlemen that we're going to introduce here, Zack and Cap Jones, joining us on the My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast. But yeah, just to get that out of the way, guys, I really want to commend what you've done and the fact that it's in IPFS. You're obviously, taking the old school, what was great about old school hip hop, and bringing it into the new school. And it's a lot of relevant stuff. I mean, the R.A. Rugged Man song, I think, came out within the past 2 years, the one that you guys featured, because he disses Joe Biden in the chorus. You gotta love that.
Well, no, that's actually from maybe 2016 or 2017.
Oh, yeah?
He said that. Yeah, that was on what the hell is that record called? The Legends Never Die. That was the one before his newest one. His newest one, though, is weird because that came out early 2020. And a lot of the shit he's talking about sounds like some of the stuff that happened in 2020 and since. So he's tapped into something because,
Well,
yeah, he's kind of ahead of the curve.
yeah, for sure. And he's definitely one of the more, recognizable names within underground hip hop. He's been on Tinfoil Hat a couple times. So maybe folks, if you're new to that name and you're listening, definitely go check out RA. He's kept it real for decades now. I remember the first song that really hit, that even like my homies that didn't like underground rap respected this song, was the Uncommon Valor song, right? The way he describes the Vietnam War in those lyrics is just so vivid and really captures, a lot of emotions, and really kind of the backdrop for a lot of where, this conspiracy culture, if you can even call it a culture, was born, and this sort of fringe that was growing in the 60s and 70s, and that eventually evolved into hip hop and so on and so forth. But let's not get too far out of the way here, guys. I apologize for running right in recording, but the way you guys were talking, I'm like, these guys just sound ready to go. But let's get to know each other, because this is our first time meeting. Obviously, I'm almost certain you guys reached out to me, but either way, it's perfect. I would have reached out to you guys if I had found you, because it's right up my alley. Underground rap, I don't know, maybe you've heard me say this before, but it's a big part of how I even really woke up. The information that was being expressed musically with the, brilliant lyrics from all these different artists that were putting their talent into something that really didn't seem like it was valued that much. I'm sure these guys have great careers when you look at them individually, but, I remember Vinny Paz in particular had a song that was like, yo, fuck Spotify, or I think it was Apathy, actually. It was something about like, going broke because of these downloads and the way the internet has changed and whatnot. And I think what you guys are doing with IPFS is really, really brilliant. So before I go and ramble on and on and on, can you guys introduce yourselves and tell the audience what you guys are about, how this started and so on?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go first. Well, I pretty much just do Dead World Radio. Cap is somebody I met through doing this. He's a rapper. We hit it off immediately. He sent me, he hit me up on Twitter. He's like, yo, play some of my stuff. So I'm like, all right. And what was that one? What was the name of that second one? Not Magic Mall.
It was Haunted Mansion.
Haunted Mansion. Yeah, dude. So I was checking that out, and I was like, dude, this shit is serious. And it's weird when you get, a message like that from somebody random on Twitter, that like the production, like it's top class, you know what I mean? And, the rhymes, like he had everything mastered, like entirely in every single facet of it. The rhymes, his production, everything, his storytelling abilities. So I was like, dude, this guy is putting in some serious work here. So, I had him on. He was the first guest I actually ever had. And we've been working together on some different things, starting to put out cassette tapes. I'm going to be putting out his new record, Doom World, on cassette. And we're always texting each other and goofing off and shit like that. But yeah, that's pretty much me, though. I just do the Dead World Radio thing. I love IPFS. I think that stuff is really going to change the landscape of the internet, especially now with a lot of the different censorship. Like we could circumvent all of that. Everything will be able to run if enough interest is paid to it.
Yeah,
and things like that.
And we'll definitely get into all the details. But first, let me apologize, Cap. I apologize I didn't check out your stuff. I did see it on Spotify. I noticed you had that new record.
Check out Doom World, man. He killed that thing.
Yeah, and I want to say, I'm pretty sure the Haunted Mansion album, right, is on Spotify, so people can go check that out as they're listening to this. If they want to jump out and listen to that real quick. But tell us about yourself, Cap, because it's a pleasure to have you here, and I apologize for not introducing you properly.
Oh, no word. No, there's no proper introduction. Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm just an independent artist that really writes because I love it. I'm definitely not a young buck. I've been doing music for a long time in a lot of different groups and a lot of different projects. And this is just a project to sort of talk about the world or philosophy or, current events. and sort of just through the pane of glass that I see it, or really that the universe gives to me, the way I interpret it, you know. And like Zach said, we met on Twitter. I don't know how I saw. I mean, that's just probably some weird algorithm thing that put Zach's tweets on my feed, because I'm really not a huge social media person. But I saw he was into crypto and a lot of things that I was in, and I was like, man, I got a link with this dude. It's sort of weird how I found him. But yeah, once we linked up, it was pretty much instant. We were sort of chumming it up like we went to high school together.
Right on. Yeah, man. And I definitely appreciate the level of, you know, intelligence you guys are bringing to this, because I could tell just by, you know, what I heard in the few episodes I listened to on your website, Dead World. I don't think it's deadworldradio.com. That link, I don't know, it didn't take me to the right place. I'll make sure I mention in the intro and the outro the correct link, and it'll be in the description. But that's awesome. I'm glad to hear you guys linked up. I think there's some sort of synchronicity that brings like minds in resonance together to do this kind of work, you know, for a good cause, to spread this awareness, to spread this information. Maybe I'll ask both of you guys this to answer individually. Cap, you can go first. You know, what inspired you to go down this road? You said you've been doing music for a long time. Obviously, you have a sort of conscious approach to your music. You're talking about things that are actually going on in the world, as opposed to, you know, the majority of artists who kind of just seem to fluff things up. And we don't need to name names, but the, you know, what's being played on the mainstream Billboard radios, if they're even getting any play these days, is the opposite of consciousness. We all know that. We don't have to spend too much time talking about that. But when did this journey start for you, Cap?
Oddly, this project specifically probably started, I was living in New York City at the time. I've always written and worked on hip hop, but to make this type of sort of focus on these topics started right around, like, I would say 2009 or so, 2008, 2009. I was living in New York City and just seeing a lot of things shifting, and a lot of sort of awareness sort of being given to me by my surroundings, and seeing how people were living and what they were focusing on versus what was going on was sort of an internal battle, being forced to sort of focus on work and focus on money and focus on sustaining a certain level of income to provide for myself in a city that was so expensive, and just sort of watching everyone else around me focusing on the same things sort of led me into trying to figure out what it was all about and why. And that's why I think I started to shift and stop writing songs about, you know, the run of the mill stuff, and trying to figure out how I could try and maybe wake or bring some things to other people's attention that I wish I'd learned sooner, maybe.
Right on.
Yeah, New York is weird, man, because it is so expensive, and there's so many people. Like,
yeah, it's crazy.
Like, you do get lost in that grind, and everybody's grinding. You got some hot girl with you, and you grind it. But like, it's just weird. Like, you always are talking about the rat race, and you're just on this little Ferris wheel thing. Like, that's what New York. I don't know. That's the vibe I always got every time I go there. I tried to live there for a month, and I couldn't hack it, man.
I mean, it's weird. It's a very, it's just a machine, you know. I'll always love New York City, and I moved there in like 2005 and fell in love with it. But it's definitely just a machine as far as commerce and commercial, you know. The push marketing for everything is just, that's crazy. So it kind of, it's you get enamored by it, you know.
I hear that, man. I was in New York City 2-3 weeks ago now, seeing Alex Stein, Conspiracy Castle. He had some podcasts scheduled. He flew in, and I took the train down and met up with him. But yeah, I mean, you know, living in Connecticut, not too far from the train, my family, we always took the train down to New York City every now and then. So I've kind of seen it throughout the years, never really that intimately, but it definitely has a oppressive, exhausting sort of energy if you're not from there. going there, it's like, it's very, it feels like bombarding. Now, keep in mind, I prefer to be in the forest. I prefer to be going for a hike. So it's really any city would probably give me that feeling. But I know New York pretty well, being from Connecticut. But how about you guys? Are you guys not too far from? I mean, Cap, sounds like you're in New York. What about you, Zach?
Well, I'm in Scranton, Pennsylvania right now.
Oh,
I lived
damn.
in Philly for, I don't even know, it was like over 10 years, like 11, 12, something like that.
Have you heard any of the work I do with Michael Wan on Pennsylvania?
Actually, yeah, dude, I was getting a kick out of that when you were talking about how creepy Scranton is. I'm like, it is creepy, man. There's a lot of Masons here.
Damn.
A lot of secret society stuff here.
Yeah, well, speaking of Biden, I'm pretty sure he's from there. At least he spent some time there.
That's right.
I never know what to make of that, because I think he was like super young.
He's got connections there.
Delaware.
Yeah, he's from Arden, Delaware, which is a weird place in itself. But yeah, he's got connections in Scranton, according to Mike's research, and I trust his research. I think he's not political really, but it all comes in, I think the people who aren't political, who kind of connect those dots, usually lend themselves a little more credibility, because they don't seem to have an inherent bias. Like I've never seen Mike go on a rant about anyone political, anybody, so yeah, I don't know exactly the depth of his connections in Scranton, but yeah, that's interesting, man.
Even just like that stuff aside, it's so corrupt. Like the last mayor is in jail right now for corruption.
Oh yeah.
And then I don't know, from Portland ended up taking his place, and I'm like, she's not even from Scranton. What is going on here? Like we got gutted a long time ago, and it's just like the fallout of that. Everything's run down. The city's falling apart. The taxes are crazy high. There's no businesses. So, like, I don't know. All the Masonic stuff aside, is the corruption is just wildly rampant.
Just to clarify, I actually don't live in New York anymore. I live in Florida. I don't want to I don't want to. I left New York in like the end of 2018, right before the pandemic.
Okay, so you made the move early. You sensed it somehow.
I did. It was lucky. It was a lucky call, the crapshoot, but it was a lucky one.
Damn.
And I have to ask you really quick before we move. You said you're from Connecticut, and I've listened to episodes before, and you talk a lot about New Haven. You from
like the greater New Haven area, if you could even call it that. I'm from like a couple towns over, but yeah, I grew up like
fan of Louis' Lunch. Is that a thing for you or no?
It's so weird that you mentioned that, because my buddy Rob, he's become a friend of mine. He found me through the show, and he's like twice my age, but he's a cool dude. He has me help him out with odd jobs here and there. The first time we met, we went to Louis' Lunch, and I hadn't gone there for years, so I didn't really have an opinion. If you asked me a couple months ago, I probably would have been like, oh, it's all right. But dude, we went there, and the bread on the bread was sopping with blood. That's how uncooked this piece of meat was. And I'm not really like a big meat eater to begin with, so I couldn't tell you the differences. Like, oh, I like my meat rare. Like, no, I ask for fucking medium every time. I'm like, give me my burger medium cooked. Okay, I don't want it burnt and I don't want it pink. And these guys, they have like this weird sort of like entitled sort of like, well, this is just how we do it kind of attitude, which I'm sure everybody has those types of restaurants where they live. But yeah, they're just weird, and they're like really against ketchup. They will never give you cheese on your burger. Me and Rob had a good laugh. Fuck them. That's my attitude on Louis' Lunch.
I haven't been there in a decade probably, but I had to ask if you were a fan or not. That's funny.
Well, I'm sure they had their heyday. I'm sure there was a time when maybe it was better, but yeah, I don't know what's going on over there. But if that's the way it's always been, then shit, I cannot relate. But these elites that like Yale and live around here, they have different tastes. So
they like the blood. That's
yeah. But before we get too far into all that stuff, because I could tell you guys some more stuff about New Haven. Zach, you're from Scranton, or greater Scranton area. I've been to Scranton. I've seen a couple things over there. Almost 100% certain it's on the Susquehanna River, so it's definitely connected to a lot of what Michael Wan researches, and it's also on top of this like big anthracite coal deposit.
Yeah.
And Mike talks about how it's kind of like this, black energy, not necessarily dark, not necessarily evil, but like in the alchemical sense, like black. You get what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm originally from Scranton. I moved to Philly. I was 18. And, so I grew up around here. And the coal thing is kind of wild. Like, actually, my dad was telling me, it was a couple days ago, I was helping him out with something, but he was telling me that his uncle lost a leg in the mine, like back in the day. And I don't know, there's weird stories like that, because it used to be a boom town. Like, this was a pretty wealthy area. Like, I mean, I'm not even sure, like 60, 70, 80 years ago. And once they stopped like producing all the coal, everybody just kind of slowly left. But so the houses, they're like very old, but like they're very nice. You know what I mean? Like they're definitely kind of like mansion-y style, very big. And I don't know, but I think that's just the weirdest vibe of it all, is that, they came in, they stripped everything out of the land. They made all this money. It boomed. And then, as soon as they gutted the place, everybody left. And like, we've just been sitting here like this, gutted now. The tax situation is crazy. There was actually a record store. It was there probably a good 15 years. It was called Embassy Vinyl. They ended up just having to close. I don't know, all the venues that ever opened up, they never lasted more than maybe, 3 years, I think was one of the longest ones, Test Pattern in Scranton. So yeah, I don't know. It's a bummer town, and the politics, it's all corrupt. I know there's a lot of like crime family stuff with the Naples and all that, but
well, and I'm sure it's a similar kind of atmosphere to what we have going on in Connecticut, just based on my few times being there with like, I don't know. It's sort of this mundane oppression, it's not like in your face. It's just sort of bleak, and people aren't really happy with their lives. And most people that, make something of themselves usually leave, or there's some rare exceptions who people who really find their niche. But was there anything that happened when you were younger that sort of woke you up to, this sort of greater reality that you're now, kind of a part of with what you're doing with your Dead World Radio show? And
well, I grew up, I was like a skateboarder kid. I was into like a lot of the punk bands, a lot of hip hop stuff. And I mean, we always got hassled by the cops. We had one cop, he pulled us over almost like every weekend, and he would act like he didn't know who we were. So that was always weird. I don't know. The Chamberlain was a massive like weapons producer back. I don't know. I know the Cold War was going on when they were like really popping off. But so we'd always go by that, and it was kind of sketchy. It's like, that's the military industrial complex. You know what I mean? Like right here. And they create a lot of jobs, though. I know a lot of people that work there. That's really the vibe. You were working for the coal mines, you were working for the weapons manufacturers. Now it seems like everybody's working either for the hospitals. We have like Guy Singer everywhere up here. So you're either, a nurse or some kind of, bureaucrat administration position, and then schools. But it's all still just kind of government corrupt jobs. And then if not, you're doing like DoorDash, or you're working at the Walmart. So I don't know. Growing up though, we had a lot of fun. Like it's a city. There's a lot of people, but there's like woods. If you drive like 10 minutes, you're in no man's land out there. You could kind of just do whatever. So I had a lot of fun. Just kind of, we'd always be drinking in the woods or walking around, smoking a little bit. And then, you could go back to the city though, and you could go and skate around downtown. So I like the complete opposite, like the duality of it. We were able to kind of get the best of both worlds growing up. So, I mean, I'm talking all this mad shit on Scranton. I love that I grew up here though. You know what I mean? Like I did have a good time. It really helped me kind of become the person I am today. So I wouldn't have changed any of that, but it is kind of a bummerville though.
No, I hear that. And I have that same sort of like up and down with where I'm from, as great as it is. And it's just as shitty in equal and opposite ways, but yeah, I hear that, man. And music can be sort of an equalizer and an outlet. And it seems like that's why they've weaponized music. You know, they've taken that potency out of music, at least the mainstream music, and made it harder for, you know, independent artists to get the same, let's say, airtime or attention. But that, you know, that's now kind of inverse. I mean, especially with podcasts and, you know, comedians, the people who are going against the narrative are overwhelmingly becoming championed, you know, rather than subjugated and silenced. And I think the internet, you know, like Sam Tripoli always says, it got out of their hands. You know, they created this web 2.0 with the hopes of locking us all down onto these websites and apps and platforms. But clearly the people who are behind innovating the internet are one step ahead of the curve. And I don't think Klaus Schwab and his goon of geriatric fucks could keep up with that kind of technological know-how. They might be able to pay a bunch of young dudes to do it, but I mean, that only goes so far. There's, for everybody they can pay, there's, you know, thousands of coders doing this stuff for the love of the game. And IPFS, I think, is kind of coming in as this, like, you know, Ernie Hancock says, like, pirate radio, you know, pirates without borders, pirate radio. That term comes from, you know, people having a boat and using their boat to project that radio signal out and, you know, take listeners away from the mainstream sources. But you two have joined forces to break the spell that's enslaved this world. That's what you told me. And I love to hear you guys elaborate on that, because I think my listeners are with you. I think we see the spell. I think we understand what's going on with the music industry and how they've sort of stacked the cards against independent, creative, you know, self-expression and really the soul. You know, they're trying to extinguish the soul. But I'll let you guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just put these things together. I'm trying to go for like a very sort of dystopic vibe, you know what I mean, to the whole thing. And then so like that's like all the little clips, like, but it is something a politician is saying or somebody's saying on the news. So I just try to take that out and be like, yo, listen to what it is that these people are saying. This is crazy. Like, this isn't a conspiracy anymore. Like, these people are telling you constantly what it is that they're doing to you. And so I always try to just find like some of that stuff and then maybe put like a little spooky music behind it to like add the effect or whatever. And then, yeah, I've tried to find like just people that are underground. Like R.A. the Rugged Man's probably like the most popular guy that I'll play. You know what I mean? I try to stick with like underground stuff, a lot of stuff that I'm listening to. And I mean, especially with this COVID thing, like the only people in music that are pushing back are the hip hop guys. Like the punk bands you think would be out there being like, oh, fuck that, we're not going to listen. But no, they all immediately buckled. And I think that's, I don't know, there's something to that though, I think, because like a rapper could just blow up by himself. They don't need the machine of the industry behind them to do it. And the type of person now, they're very confident. They're not going to just buckle because the government or everybody could tell them they're wrong. If they, you know, if they're not proven to be, they're not going to change what they're saying. And they're going to also have a dialect with you. So I think that's a big reason why a lot of the different celebrities who came out against the COVID stuff, they kind of just pretended it wasn't happening because they didn't want them to engage. And then when they engage, maybe some people will be like, you know what, actually Busta Rhymes is making sense right now. Or Styles P, he actually has a good point on why, you know, we shouldn't be taking this vaccine. So I don't know. I really love that that's happening. And I think it's just the type of person that becomes a rapper. They have that sort of confidence and able to just stand and, you know, defend themselves, basically.
Right.
But so that's what I do, though. And as far as the artistic stuff, man, I think that's more in Cap Jones's court.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because the music industry in general just became so homogenized, and it became like I hate to say it, but like an algorithm for success in regards to what you're talking about, the way you sound, and all of those things become. It just makes everything else sound generic. You know,
and it even becomes like a generic personality. I mean, to an outside observer, like I'll tell you, I've been a fan of rap as long as I've had the ability to choose what music I could listen to. And it wasn't very long before I realized, like, oh, hey, what's on iTunes ain't all of it, you know? And I started looking and finding, you know, all these different underground artists. And for a while, I was like, wow, these guys, they're great, you know? But unfortunately, and I don't want to get too political if you guys would prefer not to, but unfortunately, I think it's become political, especially, you know, a lot of the maybe what we would consider social justice warrior talking points were not valued at all in the mainstream. So you heard the underground talking about, you know, the rights for minorities and rights for people who are on the fringe, you know, no matter who they are, color, creed, race. Like, rappers were behind it. I remember Immortal Technique put out an album, or was a part of an album for Leonard Peltier, you know, native, I believe he's from South America or Central America. I could be totally wrong, but somebody who's, you know, a political prisoner, somebody who was definitely not used by the Black Lives Matter as a figurehead to be used to get sympathy, you know. And I don't know how many rappers at that point in time went with or against that narrative, or how many just stayed silent to stay out of it. But it was a little disheartening that, you know, I saw some rappers, you know, kind of just fall off the map, you know. And, like, to be honest, I don't think we necessarily have to go through names of people, but like you mentioned, R.A. the Rugged Man, I think he's an example of someone who's stayed real, stayed authentic. Another one, Cannabis, you know, Cannabis has stayed authentic. I haven't heard him go against anything he's ever said, you know, and that's something. And, like, unfortunately, although I always talk about Vinny Paz and Jedi Mind Tricks, and I think, like, they're great and what they did was great, like, I haven't seen that same thing from Vinny. And, you know, who am I? I'm just a fan. If Vinny ever hears this somehow, I fucking can't imagine he ever would. You know, no disrespect. I respect what he's done. But to be honest, like, I listened to the dude's podcast. I checked out some of his more recent albums, and they still have that same Paz vibe. They still hit hard. You know, the lyrics are graphic, you know, but they're not what they were, man.
He's just rapping at this point, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's like End of Days was like, you know, top of the list, you know, and now it's like, bro, why are you not talking about COVID? You know what I mean? And, like, his podcast, I remember they were like clowning people who, you know, it was just something, like, I probably misunderstood it, but it just felt like they were doing the same thing that a lot of the comedy podcasts I was listening to at that time did, which was they just either remained silent or they went with the narrative, you know, and that caused me to stop listening to a lot of comedy podcasts, you know. Now, I mean, there's only as much as I can count on one hand that I listen to, because those are the only comedians, in my opinion, that I liked in the first place that stayed authentic, stayed true to themselves, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on something, though, in you know, when people it's sort of all become politicized, right? So if you take a stance, and, you know, a lot of people remain silent on things because it's easier, right? When it's all so politically charged, to take a stance on something makes you vulnerable one way or another. And so I think a lot of people they'd rather, I mean, it's kind of turning a blind eye to it, or I guess, or removing yourself from having to deal with the reality that either way you cut it, you're vulnerable in this whole scenario. And that's tough for people to oftentimes admit to themselves even. So I think a lot of people aren't even, they're not aware of it enough to even know that.
Yeah. And I think too, like, the silence, like, the people that should be talking about it, not talking about it, like, the silence says, I think, more than anything, what is actually going on. I mean, Mark, if you want to hear a crazy anti-COVID lockdown, breaking everything down, you got to listen to that Cap Jones Human Behavior song. That shit is wild. I mean, yeah, because if you don't know what to say, then they don't know what to say. And I think, I mean, I don't want to call them like cowardice, you know what I mean? But I think it is sort of, if you disagree with what is happening, if you don't think people should, you know, lose their business over this virus thing, or you don't think people should be losing their jobs for not wanting to get a vaccine nobody knows about yet, and you're not saying something, like, I think this was a big ball to drop, and I think a lot of people dropped it. But as time goes on, though, I think a lot of people are, anybody that had the inkling, like it takes a certain person to look at this thing and be like, no, I'm not doing it. You know what I mean? The pressure was crazy. So I don't know. I try not to be too hard on that kind of stuff. But as time goes on, though, the people that were talking about it when it mattered, I think that's going to, I think people are going to have a lot of respect for them, because that's something that you should have a lot of respect for. Like Cap was saying, man, it's hard to go out there because, you know, you don't want any kind of problems. You don't want to lose a fan. You're not trying to really piss anybody off with your music. But I don't know. I think it's appreciated. At least I appreciate what you're doing, Cap. And every artist out there right now, like Styles P has that song where he straight up says, I'm alkaline body. I'm never taking the vaccine. Like, and that was a huge song that he made it one of his singles. And nobody, we can't talk about Styles P because he'll go on an interview and break down what an alkaline body is. And he'll break down, you know, why you shouldn't put a foreign substance in your body without anybody knowing you know what I mean? What it's going to do to you in a couple of years. And I think people in charge of the narrative, they'd rather avoid it because kids will tune in. They'll be like, you know what? I like Styles P and he's making a lot of sense right now. So they just kind of backed off. But
yeah, and all respect to you, Cap, because that's needed right now. And I know a lot of people tuning in to this show are going to check you out because of that. And yeah, definitely let me know. Remind me that name of that song again, and I'll put it in the episode description, because I think people are going to want to share that. I mean, there's only a couple rappers, like I said, that I can think of off the top of my head that have released anything relevant that I think speaks to what's going on. And yeah, maybe there's a lot of people dropping the ball, but there's also this like wisdom and truth that was embodied in hip hop that unfortunately way before COVID, I think was, you know, being oppressed, suppressed, and just shunned. You know, it was sort of put on the second stage next to, you know, the easier stuff, the formulaic stuff that Cap was describing, you know, and it really just presents this sort of, you know, you know, I don't want to insult people because I know there's a lot of people that love this kind of music, but it's just unintelligent, you know, and I hope I'm not insulting you guys either, you know, because I know, Cap, you said that you used to make a lot of music before you made this sort of shift. And I don't think that it necessarily has to be intelligent for it to be good art. You know, I'll say that as well. But, you know, as far as like the level, the bar that's being raised right now, like we need to see more people come up and raise it, in my opinion, as just like I said, just a fan of the art and the style.
For sure. I mean, there's like, you know, there's all different types of art. So some people make Naked Gun 33 1/3, and some people make Cherry to the Gods, you know what I mean? And that's sort of like where I think there's a place for whatever makes people feel good and feel happy and introspective for whatever reason. But I think that hip hop specifically, at least when I started listening to hip hop, was just such a political force, you know, groups like Public Enemy and, you know, guys like KRS-One. And even, I mean, I woke up and put on to a lot of things from early Wu-Tang Clan stuff that I know they got into all the Jordan Maxwell material and all that. And so a lot of those concepts came at me when I was in high school and way too young to really digest what was going on. I think about Goody Mob, what they did on Soul Food was, it blew my mind when it came out, and it was very, very ahead of its time. And so there's always been that arena, or at least early in my youth, I found hip hop in that arena, and I felt like to write that sort of stuff just gave me more fulfillment, that I was sort of serving some sort of purpose other than just reiterating what a weekend party was, or, you know, whatever, right?
The big plain long limousine.
Yeah, exactly. Like we all have. There's like I said, there's places for whatever makes people feel good, and sometimes people just want to sing and dance and think about what's going on in their life. That's great, but I think in this world of analyzing what's wrong and what we can improve upon. It's sort of like a sports team, or, you have to analyze your weak links individually, as a community, as a race, as a whole. The human race has to analyze what's wrong with what we're doing to really improve upon it. And to do that, you have to look at the negatives, unfortunately.
Right. And maybe I'm taking a purist approach, but I do think, when we trace music back, the further back you go, the more eloquent, the more, punctuated and articulate it is to the time and the place that it's created, and I think originally when music was created, it was, I don't know if we can even really trace back when music was created, because it's such an integral part of what being a human is. But, if we want to follow the lies of the mainstream history and say that, these Greek guys went and discovered all this sort of geometry and mathematics. And one of the things that I heard recently that's kind of stuck with me, I've probably repeated over the past few episodes, is, math plus space is measure, math plus time is music, and there's something that's tapping into the fabric of the universe when music works in that way. And it doesn't always work in that way. And, there's a whole history of how it's been manipulated from its pure version. I don't think you can get purer than just like a drum and people singing, maybe strings and other rudimentary types of instruments. I don't know. Maybe you guys have a different opinion. You're talking to a guy who has no musical talent. I mean, some people ask me if I'm a musician based on how the show sounds, but I just have an ear. I just have an ear. I have no talent whatsoever. So maybe this is an unsophisticated opinion, but do you think music over time has devolved, or do you think it has evolved?
I mean, I think that there's a lot. I've been in a lot of discussions about frequency tuning inside music, where, the most modern music is tuned to 440 hertz as a standard. And that's actually different from what the earth has as an actual frequency. I believe it's like 432. Right. So there's some interesting concepts there to really dive into, because I think that as a whole, if you listen to a song, I mean, any song modern now, listen to one of my songs, and then you go back and listen to music from 25, 30 years ago, it doesn't sound the same. It doesn't carry. And maybe this is me being nostalgic or me impressing my views as a, aging person onto what I'm listening to currently, but it just doesn't sound the same. It doesn't carry the same weight, the same soul as the old stuff did. And I think that there is a degree of that comes from machines. The more we incorporate technology into the way we make music, sort of dehumanizes it to varying degrees, in my own opinion, but also industry standards that could really be looked into as well with the tuning and stuff like that.
They sort of alter the trajectory in a way.
For sure.
And like all the amps back in the day were like tubes. The whole recording process was like pretty wild with the big fat, like 2-inch tapes and things. Like it's definitely different now. And you're not wrong. I mean, that's a fact. It sounds different. You know what I mean? Whether or not you have a preference, you like the older stuff or the newer stuff, it is different. 100%.
Yeah.
Right.
It's kind of crazy. It's definitely there's a phenomenon to it. I used to really get into frequencies and listening to frequency. I meditate from time to time, and back in like maybe 2011, 2012, I got into listening to certain frequencies while I was meditating, and the effects that had were pretty substantial, which is what caused me to start looking into why is standard music tuned to 440.
There it is. There's a seed. See, now I can totally resonate with that and reflect with you on that, because I've had very similar meditations. And, it's sort of a gamble. And maybe you can speak to this. But for me, I felt like it was sort of a gamble just kind of picking any old track, whether it was on YouTube or some site that had like MP3s to download. Because, yeah, they could tell me it's 432 hertz and all that great stuff. But I don't know. I don't have a way to test that. I don't know. I could be getting like some crazy psychotronic hallucination hypnosis sound, and that's super paranoid. But yeah, I've had those same sort of breakthroughs despite that, listening to certain frequencies and even taking it a step further and trying to create those frequencies with my own, human instrument by ohms and different chants. And I really do think that was, I did that at such a young age that's really where it kind of really started to turbocharge. I was already interested in all this stuff, but when I did that, it was like, oh, okay, this is something, there's something to this. And yeah, maybe I'm going on about myself too much, but did you start to feel, what people consider like a download when you were having these experiences, Cap?
It was just a fascinating thing because depending on the tone and my ability to sort of completely dedicate myself to that given meditation, it would have different effects. Sometimes I would come out of the meditation with more energy, or I would come out of the meditation calm. I was fascinated by it because I'm naturally drawn to sound as an individual, tones and frequencies and things like that. And I did have the means to sort of look at what I was finding on the internet, be it, certain frequencies would cause this type of effect or can cause another type of effect, and sort of looking into that. I had what felt like dreams from certain meditations with certain frequencies. And yeah, I was blown away by it. Not just myself, but I was kind of pushing this around my circle of friends who were sort of open to that sort of thing. And hearing all that feedback was sort of reassuring in the fact that I wasn't like just sort of, sort of buying into something, or it wasn't any sort of placebo effect. It was definitely fascinating though. Yeah, for sure.
Right on.
I know they say like cat purrs is a certain frequency that could actually like heal. So if they get hurt, sometimes like they'll just start purring, and it like helps. I don't know much about the biology of a cat, but like the molecules or whatever like start to repair themselves because of the frequency of a cat's purr. I thought that was kind of wild.
It speaks to the comfort that people get from owning cats. I mean, I've had cats in my life, and friend of the show, Alex Stein, has a whole harem of cats in his house. I think he has toxoplasmosis because he has so many cats, but he still hasn't been taken down by COVID. So who knows? Maybe there's some healing aspects to it. That's the first on the My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast. We've heard wilder things about cats, but that's definitely one of the most interesting things I've heard.
Yeah. Now frequencies are weird, man. I don't know that much about them though. Like, Cap, when you were asking me about the mastering levels and all that, I'm like, oh shit, I don't know about this.
Yeah, I'm really nerdy about that sort of stuff. Just coming from, like I said, I'm just interested in sound in general. And so I always really, I just want to be a perfectionist about the levels of the masters and stuff like that.
So you're telling me you might be able to help me understand what the hell my compressor's doing and how to actually tune it? Because I mean, we'll take this conversation off the air afterwards. And
I can definitely help you as far as describing, if you can, we can take it offline, but talking about your compressor, yeah, I can definitely help you. But I also think that there's a real joy in trying to understand it for yourself and figuring out, and you can go on YouTube and somebody can tell you what they think it needs to be set as, but that sort of lends itself to the, everything sounding the same sort of thing. When you first signed on, I thought your mic sounded great. So
I was just about to say that you guys gave me the approval right off the bat. So I maybe I tuned it in just right, but that's good to hear, man. I appreciate that.
Always.
Well, shit. Yeah. I think the music industry is definitely seeing more people waking up to this. I don't know how vocal they're being about it, but there are some really big, like, I mean, this guy's kind of like came out of nowhere, in my opinion, but Tom McDonald, I mean, I've had like so many people reach out to Sam to have him on Tinfoil Hat and, you know, being the booker for the show. Sam's like, hey, get this guy on. And I don't know how the hell to get in touch with Tom McDonald. So if anyone listening, tell him to reach out to me. I don't know. I tried on Instagram. He's got hundreds of thousands of followers, but this dude, you know, with the social media clips he puts out and the content that he's putting out, I mean, love him or hate him, I mean, he's really generated a lot of a huge fan base, I mean, for lack of a better word. But what do you guys think of this like opportunity that people have now? Do you think it's sort of like a thing where you're going to see people sort of faking it to making it, or is this an actual opportunity for like authentic independent artists who are already sort of in this line to have a shot? I mean, there's an audience for them now. I mean, look how big a show like Tinfoil Hat is, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're telling the truth, or at least, you know, the truth as far as, you know, if you're being honest and genuine, I think people are fucking starving for that right now. And I mean, I'm not the biggest Tom McDonald fan. I think what he's doing though is crazy. And I have a lot of respect for that. It's just like a taste thing, you know. I mean, I'm way more old school,
right?
Than,
and I feel the same way, you know.
But
I do have that same sort of, you know, it's a little more new school for me. I was more interested in, you know, what it sounds like you guys were also inspired by, which is why I really appreciate Dead World Radio. And maybe we could sort of transition into talking about that. When did you first learn about IPFS? Like, when did this become, because I heard about it like last year, a year or so ago, but when did this kind of thought come to your head, like, oh, this could be a great place to share this music that I love?
Yeah, I mean, I started running a node like probably maybe 2015, 2016. I never had anything to do with it. And I was just kind of running a node. I love the idea of it. I'm all into like, you know, the crypto, blockchain, like, you know, encryption stuff. I think like the privacy aspect of everything is always great. So, you know, I was always trying to figure out what to exactly do with it. And then I always had a joke that I wanted to start a radio show, because like, who the fuck is listening to the radio? But I was like, if you could do it now and make it like something super dope and like just special, you know what I mean? Into like 2022, anybody that is listening is going to be like, yo, what the hell did I just find? Like, so I always got a kick out of that idea. And it was last year, it just kind of clicked. I was like, wait a second, why don't I just put the radio show on IPFS? Because it's censorship resistant. They can't take it down. And yeah, it all just started rolling from there. But
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I love that. And yeah, it's absolutely true that it's censor proof. And I think you're bringing a really great vibe to that. And I want to see more people innovating in that space, because, you know, a buddy of mine, Matt Raymer, has a podcast on IPFS, and I don't know how to connect to it. I've heard that he does it, but I don't know how to connect to it. And I'll tell you and all the listeners, I mean, it was very simple. You sent me a link in the email. I clicked it. Boom. I was there. I was on the site. Click the play button.
Most browsers now will allow you to, you know, open up the links and view the material.
That might be
like,
why, because
I using IPFS and not even know.
Yeah, I tried to open on my mobile browser. It didn't work. But when I opened on my desktop, it worked fine. So maybe that was responsible for that. But either way, you know, I'm sure that'll change over time. Things are innovating in this direction as we speak. But, you know, music is particularly tricky, you know, considering licensing and all that. I mean, what's the secret there? Do you have, you know, permission from these artists, or is it just free reign because it's IPFS?
Yeah, I mean, anything that I'm listening to, you know what I mean? Because I'm on YouTube all day. So with like the algorithm for like, yo, check this out. Like, I find a lot of artists out there who are killing it. So, you know, I just kind of play whatever it is that I'm listening to heavy that week or two, however long it is between the episodes. And yeah, I never reached out. I mean, Cap's the only one I talked to. I emailed a couple people seeing if they wanted to do an interview. A lot of people don't even know what the hell I'm even trying to say to them. No, like, hey, I do this thing on IPFS. And they're like, what the fuck is this guy?
Right.
And then, and then I send them a link and it's just like a string of numbers and letters. And they're like, I don't know about this. I might be trying to get my credit card or something.
Well, have you considered doing like a companion to the show to what you're doing on IPFS through an RSS feed so people can like have those links in a podcast that they'll listen to where it's maybe those interviews with some music? Because I'm almost certain that it's kind of a situation like IPFS with RSS. There's no policing of licensing for music, but I think that day will come. I mean, that's the reason why I use Creative Commons 4.0 music only on my podcast, just in case a day comes where they start, flagging people's content. I know it can happen on YouTube, right? If I use just like any old song, like top 100 song, my YouTube video will get flagged, and I'm not monetized on YouTube to begin with, so I don't care. For me, it's really just like I don't want my content to not be available in all the places. So for me, it's kind of foolproof, but I don't know, maybe the day will come when they do that to the podcast RSS area. But I have heard like big shows like the Church of the Subgenius with Joey Diaz, he was using like every song he liked, like any song he liked. It was like, Led Zeppelin one episode, the next episode it was like it's Frank Sinatra, the next episode it was Dio, right? So he was all over the place and just kind of using any music. And I'm not trying to put you in a corner or anything. I respect what you're doing on IPFS, and I think that especially if you're highlighting like underground artists, it's like the more the merrier. Promote it, because those guys probably aren't getting enough airtime on YouTube anyways with the way the analytics are. So yeah, man, it's just, it's a matter of time before more people become aware of what IPFS is. And I think it would be really cool if you had sort of a bridge to that in the form of a podcast.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure that out. I was going to be like taking like the interviews and putting those up on like YouTube and all the different, podcasting sites. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to really keep the whole thing on IPFS, but it is just like, how do I, bridge it in? Like, how do I suck people into there? Because I think once they start seeing what's going on there and what you could do with it, it's a data center that's free.
Right.
It's crazy.
Well, I think what would be really cool is if you, and I know this is possible, it's just a matter of figuring it out. If you hosted your RSS feed from that node, and then you had your IPFS, as it is with the node, with all the files of music and whatnot, but then you had this sort of outgoing feed that went to, Podcast Addict and Castro and all the other podcast players that are out there. So that way people, like I said, they might not get all the music that they'll hear when they're on the main site, but they'll hear the interviews, they'll hear maybe like snippets or even songs that you have permission from the artist to use. I mean, and again, like it's free reign as far as it goes right now. It's up to you. I don't want to tell you how to create your show, because I had a very similar idea, especially with like Anchor. There was some kind of Anchor thing. I don't use Anchor, but Anchor was like, oh, you can make your own radio show and use, any song you want from Spotify. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll try that. I make a few playlists on Spotify. I'm like, this is going to be great. I'll have the My Family Thinks I'm Crazy radio show, and I'll have it, all these ideas I had for it. And then I go to make it on Anchor, and Anchor's like, oh, but you can only use 15 seconds of each song. And I'm like, well, that's not going to work. Wow. Who the hell's going to want to listen to that?
You're going to be playing Napalm Death all day.
Yeah. Like, what the hell is going on? So yeah, that's basically why that idea never came to fruition. But great minds think alike, and you're out here kind of innovating and using IPFS to do the same thing even better. So I love it, man. I think that's definitely something that needs to be exposed, hence why you're here on the show, exposing it to an audience. More often than not, the most popular comment I'll get is, who the hell made that intro song? So I know my audience likes underground rap. I know they like the vibe, because I did enlist Destiny Lab to make that particularly for the show, because I thought you know, this guy's cool. He was a guest on my show. He's a rapper. It's a win-win. And it's been great. And I couldn't be happier with the intro.
So they wrote that song like exclusively for the show.
Yeah.
I thought it was just one of, that's what's up. That's pretty dope.
Yeah. I hit him up. I had him on my show, episode 16 or 15, 17. I can never remember. But yeah, I told him like, hey, if you could take like a clip or something from one of my earlier podcasts and mix it into a rap song. And he was like, yeah, I'll even write lyrics and rap, you know, a couple bars. And I'm like, perfect, great. So, you know, he put it together, and yeah, like I said, couldn't be happier. We've even had a dude who's in a metal band remix it like a hardcore version. So that was sick too. Kind of have two different tastes if you're into metal or you're into rap, but it overwhelmingly, it seems like a lot of my audience is into that type of music. So
yeah, I mean, the rap is just, there's something about somebody just saying something and you're like, yo, I know exactly what you mean. Or like, yo, that's, you know, interesting. Like, it's the spoken word of it, the lyrical part of it, even more than the beats. And I love beats, you know what I mean? I'll listen to instrumentals. I like a song that I don't necessarily like the lyrics if the beat's good, but like that, the verbal storytelling aspect of it, it does create a connection that I don't think any other music can. Right. Even if like something like real poetic and all that, like the amount of words that you have to use, you know what I mean? Like you could say more, you could get your exact point across sometimes with hip hop. So right. I don't know, man. There's something about it.
No, and absolutely. I remember there was a song, I forget the name of the song, you guys might know, but the chorus is like the dumb are only confused by the drum or something, or amused by the drum.
Yeah, it was You God.
Yeah, that was Wu-Tang.
It was a Wu-Tang song.
Right. Yeah. And that old
was that Master Killer though?
I know it was Wu-Tang. I know it was Wu-Tang. So we'll just play it safe and say it was Wu-Tang. But yeah, I remember hearing that, and I always thought of this like moment that I had in music class, some music class I had in middle school or high school. And the teacher gave us all, you know, some questions, and she was like, do you listen to music for the lyrics or for the beat? And I was the only person out of, you know, 15 or 18 people who said lyrics. Everybody in my class, I mean, maybe it was just that class that I was in, they said they listen to music for the beats. And I was like, what is going on? Like, how are people not, you know, appreciating? And, you know, growing up, smoking weed with my boys, you know, hanging out with my friends, I would play like some Aesop Rock, and they would be like, who's that? Aesop? I'd be like, Aesop Rock. They're like, Aesop Rocky? I'm like, no, Aesop Rock. And they start hearing the lyrics and like, nah, this is too much. And then they would play some, you know, and again, I don't want to go and be on a high horse and criticize what other people enjoy, but there is this sort of primal oral tradition that's existed in this way in all cultures across the world throughout humanity. You know, there's something to it. Like you said, the spoken word over, you know, good music, it speaks to your soul. It has that potential. It doesn't always, but it has that potential, you know? So yeah, my ears have always been tuned to the lyrics. Maybe that's why I'm not a talented musician.
I mean, I think it's like it's the storytelling aspect of, you know, humanity, where we can connect with each other through word, you know, through spoken word, through stories, through, you know, it's why, I mean, really music, movies, every form of media that we consume is really about the story. That's just what we're always inclined to do, whether it's a campfire or a podcast over the internet. Right. People just want to talk shit and connect with each other, you know?
Right. Yeah, man. I'm 100% with that, and I think that just adds to explaining why podcasts have become so popular over the past few years. And you know, there are big podcasts that maybe are responsible for turning people on to the medium, and we all have our first podcast that broke our cherry, whatever, you know, but I think there's just something to it, man. And it probably, if there's some older folks in the audience, reminds them of radio, you know, the way radio could have been or used to be, and you know, maybe minus the ad breaks and whatnot, but Yeah, I think there's something to it that is just powerful. But speaking of that, you know, we want to be able to say what we want to say and spread it out and have it not be censored. I mean, this show has had episodes banned off of YouTube. We had our David Icke episode banned off of YouTube. We had our episode that I did with the guy who made the intro song, Ark from Destiny Lab, banned off of YouTube because we were talking about the 1918 pandemic. So, you know, usually my East Coast accent tricks the YouTube algorithm thing and they can't tell what I'm saying, but some of my guests are more well-spoken. So, you know, it's just a matter of time, but that's why we need to educate and inform people about IPFS and getting this open sort of atmosphere back in the internet. Because I don't know how many sites you guys go to, but you know, Sam Tripoli's been talking about this all the time, this dead internet theory. It feels like they're trying to push us into these apps, and IPFS might be a road away from that. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Everything, I mean, and I'm doing it too. So I'm kind of being a hypocrite here, but like, you know, you sit on Twitter, you sit on, you know, I don't use Facebook, but like people only go to so many websites. Where back in the day, you know, there was all these different places that you travel around, you find, you know, sometimes you find a crazy website. It was like finding gold. You're like, what the fuck is this? This is nuts. So yeah, that's completely lost. And actually, one of the first things, you know, when me and Cap were talking for the first time, we were talking about, he's like, yo, man, this is like some old IceCast shit. And I was like, yeah, dude, that's what I was kind of going for. Just like a weird text on a, you know, a black background or whatever, not too much going on, but it gives it like a certain vibe where like, yo, this is like a unique spot. This is one page. You're not going to find it on Facebook. It's not going to be like a Squarespace developed website, or, you know, even websites kind of all look the same because they're all coming from the same place for the most part. So
Amen.
Definitely a way to, you know, just make things unique again, make the internet cool and weird again. So it's not all just sterilized and the same thing. You could be on somebody's page and they have the same format and layout and colors of somebody else's page. It's just too weird.
I hear that, man. I hear
That's
that.
the one man gang on that. I mean, he's like he curates, and the playlist, but also the feel of the site was really dope to me. When I first saw it, I was like, it's kind of a throwback to those first internet radio stations that I felt like was exhilarating in today's world, where everything is on the same, like you said earlier, it's on the same platform. It's got the same sort of formula applied to it. So yeah, it's definitely, I think, something that could at least keep a vibe going of, you know, what people want to put out and seeing if other people want to hear that type of stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
And just like the feeling of finding something cool. Like I always got a huge kick out of that. If I could find a website that was dope that no one else was going to yet, and I could show everybody it, like that always kind of made me feel cool. So yeah. And then aside from that though, like one of the real magical parts though of IPFS is that the more people that are using it, the faster it all gets. So, you know, if everybody just started using it, it would be up and running at scale because it's scales per person using it. You know what I mean?
Now, on that point, I mean, because I'll say, like, the aesthetic, you guys both nailed it. It's perfect. I hear you. I love it. You know, as somebody, I'm only 27, so I only got so much of the internet when it was in its heyday. But I remember, and I've said this website many times, stumbleupon.com. You just go random websites. You just hit a button, and it was amazing. They even had categories, conspiracy, paranormal categories. I mean, it was amazing. But that feeling of finding something, yes, I agree with you. But on that point of like the network of IPFS and how it speeds up, I'll say when I used your site, I mean, it didn't seem like there was any problem buffering. I hit play, it played right away. So it's fast. I mean, when you're creating, you know, when you're working on the back end, you know, what do you, is that where this is going on with the speed or how? You know,
do you know how like Tor works with the nodes?
No.
It's basically just pulling it from the closest node that it exists on. So I actually have a pinning service just because, you know, if 5 people went to listen at the same time, my one node wouldn't be able to handle that. So pinning services will just put it in different nodes all across the world. And so when someone comes to it, like you're in Connecticut, if my node in Pennsylvania is the closest, you'll pull directly from my node. And then if, I don't know, say somebody is right down the street from you though, and they just happen to have my website pinned to it, you'll pull it directly from them instead, because it's just a faster, the path of least resistance kind of thing.
Okay, yeah. And the more nodes that sort of light up, the faster the speed throughout them all. It's sort of multiplication, of power by number. Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, like James Corbett from the Corbett Report, he backs up his site on IPFS, and I run it in my node. I have it pinned inside my node. So like you could help out people and they'll never even know how many people are out there with their website pinned. You know what I mean? So like that kind of stuff. It's almost like torrents too, sort of. You know what I mean? The more places it's pinned and can pull from, the faster it's going to load.
Right.
But
yeah, I'm almost certain the Grimerica show, I was just a guest on their show 2 weeks ago. That episode should be out this week. I don't know if all things go well. I think they're traveling, but they have recently gone and hosted their website, their RSS feeds, everything from their own server. And I'm almost certain they're using a network of nodes to pull that off. I could be wrong. It might be something similar, but yeah, there's a lot of people innovating in this space, man. And I'm happy to see it. I don't know how familiar you guys are with like what's going on in the podcasting world, but with podcasting 2.0, an index that Adam Curry made, it's essentially what you have with IPFS in the sense that it's censor proof, right? Apple for the longest time just created the inventory, so they had the inventory, and other apps would just plug into their inventory to, get all of the podcasts that people were subscribed to. And that could be, for someone like Alex Jones, when his RSS feed got taken away from him. I think it's the only time in history it's ever happened to anyone.
Yeah, I never even heard of that before either.
Yeah, I'm almost certain that it was his website, his RSS feed, his YouTube channel, and like 3 other things all in the turn of one switch, which, should really alarm anybody. And Adam Curry, thanks to him, you don't have to worry about your podcast, because the podcast 2.0 index is basically the replacement for the Apple index. So now podcasts that are a little more, savvy and wise to this situation, they're using that index instead. And, I prefer to use those apps anyways, so it's a win-win. But yeah, a lot of the audience unfortunately listens on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, the vast majority. And, what you're doing on IPFS is sort of like a bridge to this unfettered sort of free internet world that so many people have just not even been aware of, because they're not maybe tech forward. They don't work in a job where they're on a computer, so they just kind of have their phone, they have their apps. And how many people work a job that doesn't involve computers these days? Not many, I'm sure, but unless you're out in a rural area. But yeah, it's unfortunate that so many people are kind of corralled into these mainstream platforms. And yeah, we need more people bridging the gap like you're doing with Dead World Radio.
Hey, thanks, man. Yeah, and I always try to tell this to people too, like you could do anything with it. So anything you think you're going to be doing, YouTube or Facebook or wherever you're going to go on the internet, you could do it all on IPFS. And like, I kind of keep it streamlined and like, kind of a creepy little website, but you could have a website that looks like every other website if you wanted to. So, the sky's the limit with it. Anything you could do on the internet, you could do it on IPFS. It is the internet. It's just, evolved. It's an extension of the internet. So
now, how in depth is like entry level for this type of thing? Like me being someone who, has really only figured out how to do this podcasting thing. Outside of that, my computer, I'm not really sure, so to speak. I can't really look under the hood and tell you what's going on. So, would I need to learn a lot before I got my hands dirty with IPFS, or is it pretty simple if I find the right like tutorials and whatnot?
I think it's pretty easy. The service that I use for pinning is called Pinata. and you could sign up for a free account. And I think they give you like a gig a month of traffic that could go out and like in and out. But so if you just wanted to play around with it, just sign up for a free Pinata account. And, you upload a file and it'll generate a hash for you. And then that hash is basically just the link, instead of though having like a name like, oh, this is, cat picture 01.jpg. It'll be that, but it'll have a certain hash to it. And then, so once you start building like the HTML after that, instead of, plugging in like different just links, you're plugging in these hashes. But that, other than that though, if you could get past just, it looks kind of more jumbled up than it actually is. If you could get past that, it's the same as building anything on the internet. Even if you just like upload, like say somebody wanted to send you a funny video, you could just upload the video, get the hash of the video and send it to your friend. And then there it is. You know what I mean? Like it'll just appear, not really stylized or anything, but it'll just appear on your screen. You could watch the video there if you want.
Right. And with so many people, whether they've been censored or banned or not, worried about this type of thing, yeah, that's cool and kind of refreshing to hear that, like, hey, you could actually host your content for free or a minimal cost. And if you have enough people supporting you, you can crowdsource a lot of that back end. Because for people who aren't sort of into this stuff, like I got to pay for my website, I got to pay for my podcast, I got to host the files for the podcast. That's not, it's not just like invisible funny money. Like they're charging me for the data, right? The downloads and whatnot. So what you're talking about with this node network can eliminate that cost, in the long run as we move forward and this technology gets more widespread and more, interconnected within, like let's say this podcast, which is hosted by Transistor FM. They're a dope company. I recommend any podcaster use Transistor FM, but it's hosted through them. Whatever they're doing with their server, it's there. And then it goes out to all of the other places. And sure, I have the files on my computer, but they're not organized in an RSS feed. So it'd be a real pain in the ass to go and re-upload them somewhere. I'm sure you guys have seen those kind of problems before, but it's like, we need to crowdsource this kind of thing. And with that node network, you can do that. You can have a bunch of, let's say this show regularly gets, a couple hundred, couple thousand people listening to it. Well, if all those people are tech savvy, and it's going to get easier and easier as time goes on to, click into these things. Like you said, all you need is a Pinata account. It sounds like you could
actually
support the show, with your time and your sort of tech instead of your money.
Yeah. If you are somebody that's like, a little bit into computer software and stuff, if you get the desktop app, that has a user interface, whereas it really is just drag and drop. It's like putting, a song from your computer onto your phone. It's that simple. And that is a full node. So that's how you're able to start pinning other people's information and helping the network. Because Pinata, you're just kind of existing only in their nodes. So that's good to just get like a quick feel for it. And then if you want to take like one more, like a little, even just a baby step above that, just get the desktop full node. And because it's just as simple. And if you spend a half hour with it, I think, you'll get the hang of it. You'll see what's happening.
Right. Yeah. And, between us three and everyone listening, this is very useful, not just for me as a podcaster, but with what I'm doing with our podcast cooperative, Alt Media United, trying to stay ahead of the curve and implement this kind of stuff and be a model.
We could set up.
Let's do
actually,
it. I'm way ahead of you. Let's set it up. What is it?
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, I'm telling you, the one man gang. He's got ideas. Zach's got ideas.
Yeah, well, hey, I'm serious, man, for sure. Obviously, I need some advice from Cap on the compressor. Help me figure out what all these little knobs mean. But other than that, yeah, definitely, Zach, I would love to enlist your help and in return promote what you're doing. Not just with this episode, but by putting a page or a link to your node on our site, on Alt Media United, so people can see along the list of podcasters, Dead World Radio. Oh, what's this? Click the link. Oh God, this isn't a podcast. Where am I? And they end up on your page, and maybe some will really appreciate that, you know, that kind of joy of, like you said, discovering something new that maybe you didn't even know was out there that you would enjoy.
Yo, that'd be dope, man. Thanks.
No problem.
Hell yeah.
It's the least I can do. But yeah, definitely a lot to learn in this space, and it's kind of encouraging to hear that it's not so, you know, tedious to learn. I mean, it's not for everybody, I'm sure, but it doesn't sound that hard to get your hands wet and sort of get a feel for what's going on. And yeah, it sounds like anybody could do it. So I'm in. I mean, the podcast cooperative, our website is hosted by, you know, some site, you know, XYZ host. So they could be replaced, and that'll save me money. Who knows? I mean, it'd be sweet if I could convince every podcaster to create a node, and then we'll all just host Alt Media United ourselves and be what a real cooperative is. But who knows? We'll see. They'll have to hear this first and let me know what they think.
Yeah, I mean, you could even streamline it. So I forget exactly what they call them, a cluster node. Mm-hmm. So you could set up basically like a file that everybody will download, and then we are all connected immediately because it's already just in how you built the cluster node.
Right.
But then, so if everybody on Alt Media United was running it, if you upload a new episode, it'll pull it onto everybody's node. So like, and if somebody else, if I upload an episode, you'll pull it onto your node. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of cool stuff you could do with something like that.
Well, damn, maybe I saw it coming when I started this cooperative. Who better to have a node network than a cooperative of people? I mean, it just seems to fit right in. And that's the cool thing about this internet tech space. You know, despite what you hear about big tech and all these scary things that they do, there's a lot of room for improvement and a lot of ways to get involved and do that. And so many open source projects have probably even made IPFS possible to begin with. But I mean, Podcasting 2.0, that's an open source project. For people who don't know what that means, it means that anybody can freely go in and say, oh, this could be useful for my project too. And then they take that tool, whatever software it is, and they just plug it into what they're doing. And, you know, this is how invention should be. This is how things in the real world should be. People should be able to be inspired and innovate from each other. I don't know, maybe that's my own personal opinion or personal philosophy, but yeah.
I mean, you're absolutely right. And that's how we've been doing it. You know what I mean? That's how me and Cap got together. That's how I ended up emailing you. So, you know what I mean? And you never know what's out there. But if you put it out there, though, you start drawing it to yourself. So
right.
It's wild how it always works out.
And a rising tide raises all ships, you know? So here we are.
That's it. It's about creating awareness and keeping the ability to put those ideas and that material, that content, whatever it may be, out so that it can, reach more people and people can understand that, the point of view that they see in mainstream media isn't necessarily the most common, or there are other people with apprehension to align with those views. You know what I mean? And that sort of sparks conversations that need to be had for sure.
Right. Well, let's get weird, gentlemen. I got to ask you both, do your families think you're crazy?
I could say, depending on the family member, I would say, yeah, for sure. A lot of my family thinks I'm crazy.
Okay.
Sure.
And Zach?
Yeah, they do. My brothers are kind of on the same page as me, but yeah, my mom, my dad, they're looking at me like, what the hell is he talking about now?
Okay.
Yeah, my mom passed a few years ago, but before she passed, God bless her, she bought like the whole family. What was the 23andMe or whatever it is, the service where you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She got these out for Christmas, and she's like, she hands it to me and she's like, but I know you're too crazy. You won't even participate if it's a family thing. And I'm like, nah, I won't. Absolutely not. It was kind of funny, but yeah.
Oh man, yeah, I'm right there with you. I would not give my DNA to them either. But yeah, respect. It's not an easy cross to bear, but it's a road that few walk with pride. But I gotta ask you guys another question. As far as maybe your craziest theory, because we've all had these moments where we learn something and then maybe we go and tell somebody and the way they respond is like, oh God, I got to be careful with how much of this stuff, and Sam always says, like, you don't give those, this information to those who don't seek it. It's a lesson I think anybody learns when they get into this stuff. But if there was like a crazy conspiracy that you believed in that you think maybe could like warm somebody up to conspiracies, not just conspiracies, but maybe a more broader perspective, or if you have a conspiracy that you just wouldn't even, you wouldn't think to tell the average person because it's just too crazy. Any conspiracies maybe you think I haven't heard of before? Anything, any theories? Either one of you can answer this.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as like some conspiracy that would warm someone up to the idea of questioning what we're told, the idea that that they found the passports of the people that were flying the 9/11 planes is a really intro level, like the buildings collapsed and everything was completely covered in dust, but they found the passports of the people involved. Is just insulting, and really that's, I think, an intro level, right? That's pretty easy to sort of, for anyone to digest.
In the Pentagon too. I mean, you look at the Pentagon and
exactly.
A missile basically.
Engines, you know what I mean? Like all of that.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
Too crazy. It's like,
well, and that might be a harder sell, but I feel like, the three of us, Cap, you spent some time in New York. I lived pretty close to New York. I remember, when I was a kid, they took us out of school when it happened, like a couple hours after it happened. I was in, elementary school or whatever. But yeah, there's just something to it that it kind of hits close to home for people. And they really either hate that you bring it up, in any kind of way other than like memorance, this sort of like blind, like memorial of unquestioning sort of sympathy, or the inverse where people are like, yeah, that was fucking weird, and maybe they're not like fully like what we say, I don't know, red pilled, and they're like, yeah, and then building 7 and all that, but a lot of people really sort of can say, yeah, that's definitely not what they say it is, whether they agree on how exactly it happened. I mean, that gets into a whole different story, but no doubt.
You don't have to go the whole full, gamut of the rabbit hole on that.
Right.
Just, though somehow,
but you could.
You don't, just the idea of a passport making that entire situation as quickly as it was found, all of that, it's just
unscathed, comes out of the plane like, yeah, we're just gonna open up the window.
All of them.
Passport right now, and you know what I mean? It's ridiculous, but I don't know. The theories of I mean, the pandemic was, I feel like, tough on the early end because, God bless my girlfriend, but the moment that everything started, I was like right in on it and trying to figure out what was really going on. And that was, and I think that still is hard, obviously, but that was really difficult to talk to people about. Right. That's an easy one, but it's really the truth. I mean, it's a lot easier to tell someone about Bohemian Grove or any of these other, ideas
than it is germ theory versus terrain theory and why you shouldn't wear a mask. I hear you, man. Yeah.
It's like, but it hits so close to home because people are sort of indoctrinated
right
into, you have to toe a political line at that point. People already heavily subscribe to one side of the political fence or the other, and sort of subscribe to it to the point where like families bust up over, who they support, when in reality it's like, all of that stuff sort of is set to divide people. So those sort of things hit closer to home, and they're tougher to get people to identify with.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, like Bohemian Grove, like we'll never be there. Most of us might not ever be in California, so you could watch it from a distance. But yeah, COVID affected everybody. So to try to talk to somebody who bought it up, you know what I mean? And it's still kind of going on for some people, like oddly enough. Like, I don't know. That is the tough one.
well, yeah, I mean, down there in Pennsylvania, they had like the 3-day scare where they were like, we're enforcing the masks. And then all of a sudden, like they turned it over or something. Now I'm almost certain that it's not being enforced.
I think it was just Philadelphia. Like I moved up to Scranton in October of 2020.
Okay.
And it was already a different world. Like you could not wear a mask. Nobody really had much of a problem with it. But down there, it was like super strict.
Right.
And so I don't know. I have a different vibe up here, but my brother's still down there in Philly. He works in a sports bar as a bar back. But he said that when they did it the second time, like the most recent time, nobody was enforcing it, and everybody was kind of like making fun of it. And I think that's why they lifted it, because like, wait, we can't have them, you know what I mean, making
mocking
fun of us
it.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. I remember driving through New York City, and actually we went down to Philadelphia last summer, and it was summer, so it was definitely more lax, but yeah, they were out there. And New Haven's just the same, it's got its university, and that's just what it is. When you live in a town with the university, they tend to be, unless they're a standout, outlier, they tend to be, that kind of way, and all about the fucking protesting and all this stuff. And, we don't need to get into the politics too much, but yeah, I hear you, man. I went down to Philly. They had these signs on like the highway, light up signs that flash the messages. That was like some kind of, I think this maybe was in New York, but it was like some kind of cheesy like New York-ism that they like put in front of like, and get your mask on, you know what I mean? Or get out of here, like that kind of thing. Like it's just so contrived. So yeah, I could see how people are mocking it now, and I'm glad to hear that, because Philly definitely is one of those like cities with like a attitude and a sort of integrity that unfortunately, those SJW types, at least in the comedy scene, have kind of chipped away at that. But I think there's still some real ones. I'm a fan of Matt and Shane's Secret Podcast and all the stuff that they talk about, or not all the stuff they talk about, but I'm a fan of their podcast and all of the guests that they have on who, are from the Philly area. So it's definitely a place that I hear about often, although I don't go there very often. But yeah, man, I was hoping you guys were going to tell me like Tartaria or Flat Earth. I mean, to be fair, I haven't given you a chance yet, Dead World, to, Zach, to go ahead. But yeah, I mean, I've had a rapper on the show. Shout out to Josh Monday. He's a good dude. He's a Christian rapper, and he's full-blown Flat Earth, and I'm almost certain that he puts out Flat Earth rap songs. So definitely, check him out. Maybe consider him for one of the episodes on Dead World Radio. But what about you, Zach? You got any like wild, crazy conspiracies that you would only tell your fellow red-pilled folks? You're in good company here.
Like the cryptid stuff, like Bigfoots and all that, I kind of think there's something in that stuff. And I don't know, that's kind of like a goofy one that I think a lot of people accept. I guess, though, like a Hollow Earth, I think that pilot back in the day who was talking about, like, he was like the best pilot. I forget his name, but he's the
Admiral
only guy
Byrd?
to floor. Yeah, he flew over like the North Pole. And then he said he was like guided in by these other ships into the Earth. And it was like this race of people. And then he gets back and they're like, oh, well, he's crazy. But then they never let anybody fly over that area again.
Right.
So I don't think that guy just lost his mind one day. I think something happened to him over there.
No
Whether,
doubt.
it's like the ice wall or it's a hollow earth. Who knows? But he saw something over there.
Dude, that's where I think the Bigfoots are coming from. And I know you didn't.
Out of that hole.
I didn't know. I know you didn't mean it this way, but I almost got a little insulted. I don't think paranormal cryptids are goofy at all. I do think, yeah, they're generally accepted. Of course, they got TV shows that kind of make a mockery of the subject, but I don't know, man. I've met a lot of really honest and sincere people who have had these experiences just throughout my life. Even before I had an opportunity to talk to so many cool people on the podcast, I've met people who had these experiences just through chance. So, it was kind of odd. Like when I was a kid, I was always fascinated by it. And now, like, the topic seems to have braided into like several different parts. Like some people are like, yeah, we're going to hunt them down. Some people are like, they're coming from alien ships. And then other people are like, no, they're coming through portals, and they're phasing through dimensions and stuff. So, I know you're out there in Pennsylvania. They got a lot of Sasquatch activity out there. What do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think they're flesh and blood? Do you think they're connected to aliens, maybe somewhere in between, or some kind of portal, interdimensional, spiritual? What's your assumption when you look at that topic?
I mean, I've actually been getting more into like the whole, they like come in and out of our realm or whatever, like the 3-dimensional space, they could kind of move through the dimensions. I mean, maybe, you know what I mean? Like that kind of makes sense. That's why nobody could actually get a good, clear shot of them. No one could get too close. You know what I mean? How cerebral they could potentially be. You know what I mean? They could sense you coming. That's why they're never going to let you see them.
Right.
But I don't know, man. I think also the world is way bigger than people think. There's so much space out here. Like if you drive through PA, there's cities that are massive or whatever, and there's a lot of people, but there's like hours and hours where you're going to drive through the forest and mountains. You know what I mean? So to act like something's out there that we don't know about yet, or to act like that's crazy to think, I think is crazy. You know what I mean? There's so much space out there that we just wouldn't know.
Right. Yeah, I was down in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and they have stories over there amongst the Amish of a type of Sasquatch that they call the apple witch. It's like seen around their apple orchards stealing apples. And I mean, if I was a Sasquatch, I would definitely grab a bunch of apples if I could. But what do you think, Cap? I mean, do you look at that topic at all? What's your thoughts on it?
I've looked at it I was always fascinated with stuff like that, as a kid doing book reports on the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot and that.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a definite possibility. I heard someone not too long ago say to the argument of like finding a dead Sasquatch and why we never found one and stuff like that. But it's like, when you look at the population of black bears, I lived in upstate New York before I moved back to Florida. And like, there were black bears in that area, and we would go on all types of hikes and out in the woods. And I never saw a dead black bear, and pretty populated area in regards to black bears. So the idea that a very, very scarcely populated animal wouldn't be readily found on hikes and things like that is pretty plausible. And I think it's something that from a culturally historical perspective has been in myth and legend for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? So there's got to be something to it. I think that it's fascinating to think about. So yeah, but as far as my own belief, I'm a little bit more inclined to only believe in the things that I can see proven out. So I wouldn't put it past it being possible, but I don't know. I can't state that based on the evidence that I've seen with my own eyes yet.
I hear you. Yeah, unfortunately, they do say those who seek it, find, but I don't know if that's the case with these cryptids, because it seems like when people go out in the woods with the intention of finding them, and I'm one of those people, so I'm speaking from experience, it seems like, you never get what you expect. I've had strange experiences, but I've never seen, what I can maybe call a cryptid. I've seen weird animals, but I've never seen a cryptid. And then, You know, it just from talking to different people, like Tony Merkel's been on the show twice, and I asked him about this because he's like the guy who talks to witnesses and people who encounter weird stuff, you know. And then next to, I think, the Sasquatch Chronicles guy, got to give him a shout out too. But Tony, he said, yeah, there's something to that, you know, this intention like of wanting to go out there. It's like they sense it, you know, to your point, Zach, about these creatures having like a conscious, cerebral sort of like reaction to us when they see us, and maybe even way ahead of when we see them, you know, like save for like these few times when they're like walking in the distance and we catch a glimpse of them and they're already 10 paces out of sight by the time we know what we saw.
Yeah, maybe that's why we've only seen them like that. Like they're like, oh yeah, this guy's messing around. He's not gonna be able to snap a good pic of me. Like, I can
Right.
just slip on by real quick.
Right, man. I wonder if it was different because there are stories, like to your point, Cap, like this is something that human beings have experienced for many, many years. I remember reading a story when I was a kid, like doing a book report probably or something like that. And I saw this Bigfoot story. This guy got picked up in his sleeping bag. He was camping out there somewhere in Canada in like the 1910s or something like that. He's just sleeping in a sleeping bag, and next thing he knows, he's like upside down in the sleeping bag being like hauled along this mountain, and he's like, what the heck is going on? You know, like he's being kidnapped, and I'm pretty sure he could probably give a good thought that he wasn't being held up by a man. So by the time this like Sasquatch lets him go, he's in the middle of this like camp of many Sasquatch, and according to this story, these Sasquatch basically like kidnapped him and kind of observed him and gave him some food, and kind of like after a few days realized like maybe they didn't need him or something. Like he tried to describe like their intentions, and he wasn't sure why they ever kidnapped him. But yeah, he lived to tell the tale, so they didn't bash his head in. They probably could have. But yeah, he told the story, and it made its way to a newspaper, and then that was put in the book, and that's when I read it. But, you know, it was one of the more interesting stories, and I wonder if maybe as technology has progressed, they've been, more wary of us. You know, it's easy to beat us up, and, you know, when there's just one of us in the forest, you know, but we start pulling weird devices out, and they're like, okay, we need to get the hell out of here. This could be a gun.
Exactly.
You know,
or at least there's a camera on everything now. They probably know that.
Right.
You know?
Well, I mean, yeah. How conscious are they? I mean, I'm thinking from terms of like an animal. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's people who have dogs probably talk about this, but do you ever try to like take a picture of your dog and it just always like looks like, I don't own a dog, but I've seen people try to do this. Like, I probably tried to take a picture of my aunt's dog, but they always like look away, you know, like maybe there's some good boys, but yeah, they have this like sense, man. And who knows, maybe that even though Sasquatch is off in the woods and they're not like reading like the latest tech blog, they can sense it, you know, they know what's up.
They want you to live that experience. They don't want you to put it on Instagram. They want you to live.
Well, there's like
the Sasquatch.
Yeah, and then maybe it's something more spiritual, like it's the intention, like just by having your phone, there's like some sort of fear or attachment to the grid or to society that they sense. Wow. You know what I mean? And like, yeah, I don't know. I feel that way sometimes. Like I want to just like not have my phone at all. And my girlfriend is like that. She's total hippie. She hates that I got her a phone. But you know, it's like there is this sort of freedom and independence from that for whatever reason, you know, with my job particularly, but just at this point in my life, I'm like, yeah, no, I kind of got to stay a little close to the grid. And that's why, you know, when I go out into the woods and stuff, like, shit, I should just lock my phone in the car, you know? Maybe I will see a Bigfoot.
I mean,
but then again, maybe I'll also be missing 411 and I'll be like, damn it, why didn't I take my phone? So there's two ways you can go out.
possible. It's dangerous to be out there without a cell phone nowadays, you know.
Right. I mean, unless you're armed and
I was gonna say, just go out with the strap, you'll be fine.
yeah, unless you're strapped up, which I am not, unfortunately. Maybe I shouldn't tell anybody who hears this that, but yeah, and at this point in my life, no, not.
You put a huge target on your back.
Yeah, but hey, listen, I've been training the arts of kung fu for a while, so if anybody wants to test me, I'll put that out there. I got a black belt in conspiracy and a red belt in martial arts. We don't have to talk about this on
Dangerous duo. I'm with you
on this episode, but it's been said. We've done podcasts about martial. But anyways, back to you guys. So what's in the store for the future? What's next? I mean, Cap, you're working on music. You just put something out in February, a new album called Doom World. Obviously, Dead World Radio is pumping out episodes. I was listening to one that came out in March. I don't think I saw one for April. Maybe I missed it, but episode 33, that's a big number. It's a big number, Zach. What's coming out for episode 33? Did I miss it, or is that the next one up?
Oh, I think I'm on 35.
Okay, so I missed some stuff. I listened to 32 and thought that was the most recent.
Okay, yeah. I have been slacking though. I've been kind of busy. I've been working a lot, trying to stack some money. But yeah, I mean, just kind of gonna try to keep putting out episodes. I'm trying to get more interviews going. It's just kind of hard to get them regularly for me right now. So I don't know. I might be just kind of sticking to like one a week. And then when I could get an interview, you know what I mean, is when I could get it. But for a second, I was trying to go just full, like always get interviews now. But I don't know. That's not working out the way I thought. But yeah, I mean, I'm sticking to it. I'm going to be putting out cassettes. I just got a cassette duplicator. I'm putting out Cap Jones Doom World, which I'm super hype on. So we got that going. There's a couple artists I'm trying to reach out to see if they'd be into it. And yeah, just stuff like that. Anything from the dead world, man. And I love cassette tapes. I collect them. I collect VHS tapes. Something about this technology I think is so cool. So that's kind of just what I'm sticking with right now.
Right on. I love it. Yeah, and I definitely encourage you to keep up with that, brother. And maybe I can even help out with the interviews. But we'll keep the conversation going afterwards. And for you, Cap, you got the new album out, Doom World. People could check that out. But what's next?
Well, yeah, Doom World came out. I did all the production by myself, and it took a lot more. It's like 15 tracks, I think. So it took a lot more effort. I had a couple features on it, which was super cool. We got a feature from Killer Priest and another feature from Shabam Sadiq, who I've done songs with in the past. And he's actually on the song that Zach was talking about called Human Behavior.
Right.
And so Shabam and I talked about maybe doing an EP. I'm working on another EP, just a solo EP with a producer that I met online named Gamma Rad, who's super, super dope producer. And it's cool. It's the first thing I've ever done that I didn't self-produce, which is fun. And then I just recorded a single with a producer named Sovereign, who's done stuff with all types of artists. And she's super dope. So it's cool. I'm kind of like testing the waters of working with other producers. I'll probably do another album after I get done with these projects that's sort of in theme with all the other solo stuff that I've done. But right now I'm just kind of trying to open up my circle and work with other producers and other artists. And I'm super excited about that. I'm excited about some features lined up, and hopefully Shabam and I can sort of work the schedule out and do a whole EP, because it's always fun working with him. I've done a couple tracks with him and both of them turned out great.
Right on. Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I definitely look forward to listening to that. If there's any music that you guys could like send me, like just the MP3, we could even put it at the end of the episode so people can get a little taste of it before they go and check it out for themselves. And then obviously all the links, send them over to me and they'll be in the description for everybody who has made it this far. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. And Zach, thanks for reaching out, brother. Like I said, when I responded, right up my alley, and I appreciate you however you found my show, and I appreciate you reaching out and making the connection, because obviously we have similar interests and goals, with what I'm doing with Alt Media United and what you're doing with Dead World Radio and IPFS. So let's make this connection even stronger moving forward. And Cap as well, brother. It's been great talking to you. Great hearing your opinion. And I'm definitely looking forward to tuning into your music, what's already out and what's coming out, man. And yeah, I'm not certain I remember Shabam, but I can most likely tell you I've probably heard him rap before. You know, his name sounds familiar, but I couldn't like identify him. But either way, very cool stuff, brother. Killer Priest, everybody should know who he is. So that's really cool. Got to check that out. But definitely an honor and a pleasure to talk to you both. Thank you so much for being here, folks, and enjoy the moment wherever you are in the now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast. Yes, it's a Wednesday episode. Yes, I should have an extended outro, but I don't. A lot of the conversations that I've had in the past few weeks have been really, really good, and they've all been like 2 hours long. So none of them quite make the cut to be, you know, fit into this episode, but that's okay, because pretty soon you guys are going to be getting all those episodes and more on the Patreon. If you're a supporter of this show, you get all those episodes early. If you aren't, well, you gotta wait, but that's okay. It'll be out for free eventually. If you want this show to keep going at the rate and at the speed that it is, please do support the show. You know, my bills don't pay themselves, and this is a full-time job. Don't get me wrong, though, folks. My rent's not just magically getting paid by someone else. When folks aren't supporting the show, I gotta go and do odd jobs. I gotta make money other ways, which takes time away from this show, and it takes time away from the content that I could be creating. So if you want to see more of the My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast, please do go to Patreon. It definitely helps me out to get that monthly payment. Wouldn't be able to pay rent without it and all that good stuff. Obviously, I'm having some car troubles. If you've been listening to the latest 10 or so episodes, you might have heard me mention it before. So yeah, now more than ever, I could really use any support, even if it's just a one-time donation. It'd be immensely helpful. And if you do support the show with a one-time donation of more than $5, I will send you a sticker in the mail. You just have to make sure to include your shipping address, and it's really easy. You just go to the Ko-fi store and buy a sticker. That's one way to do it, and you can donate as much money as you want. You just put your address in there. Think about buying that sticker as a one-time donation, because for me, it doesn't cost much to get a bunch of those stickers in bulk, so it really helps out when you're able to support the show. And in return, you get to tell the world that your family thinks you're crazy, because, you know, who knows, maybe they won't even know that the podcast, you know, the sticker is about a podcast. They might just think, oh, this guy's got a wacky sticker that he found somewhere, or maybe this gal has a wacky sticker she found somewhere. But either way, I love everybody who's tuned in. Cap, Jones, Zack from Dead World Radio, great guests, real pleasure to talk to them. They rule. And, you know, I really dig IPFS. I think it's the next step for internet freedom. So I'm trying to learn as much as I can about IPFS. If you know more than I do about IPFS, please get in touch with me. I'd love to compensate you for your time and your knowledge. That's very helpful to me right now. So please let me know if that's your expertise, coding, anything like that, app development. Get in touch with me. I know there's a lot of talented people that listen to the show. Musicians, artists, don't stop hitting me up. I am still interested in working with you. Sometimes your messages just get pushed to the back. So don't hesitate. It won't be lame if you bump your message up and say, hey, did you miss this? I won't think any less of you. So please do get in touch with me if you want to make something happen. I'm always open to collaboration, whether that's through your talents or maybe you're a kick-ass podcast guest that I can have on this show. Who knows? I've had some really interesting conversations with people who just got their podcast started, or, you know, maybe their podcast's been going for a while and, you know, it doesn't seem like it's got a lot of traction. Who cares? I don't care. I'm more interested in talking about interesting things with you, and I don't think you have to be popular to be interesting. In fact, I think most people who are popular tend to be less interesting than the rare individuals that, you know, for whatever reason don't get the same attention. So you're not going to see the same regular old guests on this show. You're going to see high-level experts and extremely unique people with one commonality, which is our families may or may not think we're crazy. A lot of times these guests have families that don't think they're crazy because they're just so grounded and reasonable in whatever field happens to be their specialty. So very cool stuff. If you want to get every episode of the podcast early, like I said, please go to Patreon and support the show. You can also kind of get early episodes if you're a supporter on Rockfin. I publish the videos early there. I just put an episode out on Rockfin with the Truth Seeker from the Truth Seeker show, rapper Truth Seeker, very interesting guy, Christian mystic, and that was a great conversation. That's about it for today's episode. If you want to get in touch with me, Telegram, Instagram, any gram, you want to send me a gram of weed, preferably. That would be the only grams that I would accept in the mail. But yeah, Telegram, Instagram, gram of weed, we accept all of those. So please get in touch with me. Like I said, you could do a one-time donation on the Ko-fi store, or you could support the show in all the ways, and myfamilythinksimcrazy.com is the place to find all that. You can also find a link to my latest appearance on macroaggressions. I shouldn't say latest, it's my first appearance on macroaggressions, Charlie Robinson's fantastic podcast. It was on band.video. That's right, Alex Jones knows who I am now because of my Skull and Bones interview. Maybe, I don't know, I'm just saying that. But who knows? Maybe I'll be on InfoWars and Alex will say, "Tell me about Skull and Bones. What have you seen? Do you know Hibbler? Get me in touch with Hibbler." Anyways, that's my Alex Jones impression. I heard I had a wicked good Ron from New England impression, so I'll just do my wicked good Ron from now I'm abusing it. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I love you all so much. If you want to hear more funny, laid back, crazy goodness, be sure to tune into Illuminati Confirmed. We got 2 new episodes coming out this month, and you can get them early right now on the Patreon. That's right. As well as 8 podcasts. There's probably more than 8. I'm just bad at counting. Bonus Patreon only Illuminati Confirmed episodes with just the hosts, and those will never make their way to a free RSS feed because they're dangerous, they're risky. We're talking about everything. We're talking about our wives, our girlfriends, our lovers. Okay? It's amazing. It's an amazing, fun time. As for this time, be sure to support Cap Jones on Spotify. Go over to Dead World Radio. The link will be in the description. You can go right to the IPFS node. And the more people that are on it, the stronger the connection is. So go check it out right now and see if we can boost Zach's numbers. IPFS, Dead World Radio, all hip hop, no whack shit. That's all it is. For me, folks, look out for a really cool bonus episode that's coming out this Friday. And that's about it. Have a great moment wherever you are in the now. Peace.